Istaroth is a sinner, a rebel god who betrayed heavenly principles for the sake of humanity, a god of moments that froze time for the sake of all those who had been abandoned by Celestia. Yes, perhaps even for Khaenri'ah, the godless nation might not have been so godless after all. You see, Istaroth has been very directly called a sinner in-game before. When Enkanomiya sank beneath the waves, the god of time was the only one who did not forsake them. For that, the people of Byakuya became extremely devoted to her, even giving her titles like Kairos and Tokoyo Okami, which means Great God of the Unchanging World. As a god of time, you would expect Istaroth to represent the flow of it, but the opposite is true. She's a god of stasis, a god of moments, unchanging moments frozen in time. This aspect of her power can be clearly seen through Enkanomiya's sin shades, or shades of Tokoyo. These were created whenever Istaroth looked upon someone with favor, ensuring that the memories and feelings they were experiencing in that moment would forever remain in the world. What's really weird about this is the connotation with sin. These after images are created from a god's favor, after all. That should be a very positive thing, not a sinful one. So I dug deeper to try and make sense of this, but boy oh boy, I did not expect the rabbit hole to go that deep. So remember that this is just a theory, grab your tinfoil hat, sit back and enjoy the descent into madness. Istaroth may have only been worshipped in Enkanomiya and Mondstadt, but her influence is everywhere, and almost every time, her power is made manifest through the stopping of time. Don't believe me? Check this out. She's mentioned in Before Sun and Moon several times, but the last written record we have of her directly taking action in Enkanomiya dates back to the third year of darkness. The next passage is titled The Year of Blindness, which was the year when Abrax began building Helios, also known as Danishi Mikoshi, the sun chariot that replicated sunlight and created the White Knight. From there, Istaroth is only ever mentioned in a parable which is not dated, but more on that later. The people of Byakuya seem to have lost contact with the divine after Helios was made, because even after the war with the Second Throne ended, they could only guess that the Primordial One had won as they believed it had banned them from returning to the surface. Since Istaroth cared so deeply for the people of Enkanomiya, she would likely have told them what was going on, had she still been in contact with them. But I don't believe she was. You see, Tokoyo, meaning unchanging, was used as a ruby text for Evernight. The sin shades are also only ever visible during Evernight. The Enkanomiya that lived in eternal darkness was the unchanging world, not the Enkanomiya that had a fake sun. Which makes perfect sense. After all, do we not use our position relative to the sun to measure time? While the nation remained shrouded in darkness, it was although time didn't pass, like it was stuck in a frozen, unchanging moment in time. Perhaps that's why only Istaroth, god of time and moments, continued to watch over it. But as soon as a fake sun was created and the flow of time was metaphorically and perhaps literally restored, Istaroth seemingly vanished. Weird, and definitely the first piece of the puzzle, but it still doesn't explain why she's a sinner, so I turned to the symbols that are littered all across Teyvat for answers, and two of them really caught my eye, the triquetra and the Triskelion. The triquetra is a symbol made up of three interlocked loops in a triangular disposition that has been used across multiple cultures with varying meanings. However, it usually represents threefold concepts. For instance, in Celtic culture, it represents a triple goddess, the Maiden, the Mother, and the Crone, while in Christianity, it represents the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Genshin isn't exactly lacking in terms of gods, so it would make sense for this symbol to also be related to the divine in the context of the game. The most obvious meaning behind it would be the Moon Sisters, Aria, Sonat, and Canon, which are the closest thing we have to a triple goddess. The Walking Moon Blessing, which may display one of the sisters, even has a triquetra on it. But it also has a four-pointed star, aka a primogem. There is a lot we don't know about the Moon Sisters as of now, but the primogem is a symbol that is heavily linked to Celestia and even the Outlander twins, but not so much the moons. So it's possible neither of the symbols are a reference to the Moon Sisters, especially because this might not be one of the Moon Sisters at all. Behind this figure we do see a waning crescent moon, but we can also see a sun. Like we just discussed, the sun is used to measure time. There are even a lot of sundials in Mondstadt, proof that the nation once worshipped the god of time. The sun and the moon together could symbolize the passage of time, the endless cycle of night and day. I want you to compare the Welking Moon figure to the statue of the omnipresent god in Inazuma, which is likely a depiction of Istaroth. Do you see the resemblance? Both figures share a similar hairstyle. What if it's actually Istaroth that is represented in the Welking Moon blessing? After all, she fits the meaning of the triquetra a whole lot more. You see, Istaroth is something of a triple goddess herself. She was likely inspired by three mythological entities: Ishtar, Astarte, and Astaroth. Ishtar, or Inanna, was an ancient Mesopotamian goddess of love, fertility, and war. Astarte was an ancient Near Eastern goddess who was also associated with love, fertility, and war. As for Astaroth, he was a demon said to be part of the evil trinity, alongside Beelzebub and Lucifer. So we have three entities, each one associated with three main concepts or part of a trinity. That's as threefold concepts get. So, could the triquetra be Istaroth's symbol? While this isn't really proof of anything and more so a side note, I find it really interesting that the symbol for the Omni element, the combination of all 7 Teyvatian ones, is a triquetra. Because the shogun inlaid upon the statue of the omnipresent god, likely Istaroth, visions of all 7 elements. This symbol is everywhere in Genshin, which funnily enough might be another argument in favor of it representing Istaroth, since she too is omnipresent as she is described to be every moment. But more importantly, we can find triquetras in places where time stops, namely in domains. Domains and artifacts are very similar to scene shades in a way. No matter how long you stay inside of a domain, time will not flow. The sky and the lighting will not change. Domains are like pocket dimensions that exist outside of the normal flow of time. When you complete domain challenges, you get artifacts, which are also crystallized memories and emotions, frozen in time, much like the scene shades. Besides, domains contain Irminsul branches. It's through them that we get artifacts after all. And Irminsul was most likely created by Celestia, or at the very least, it's currently under their influence as they use it to carve the fate of the world. The interior of the tree is also blue, which is Celestia's color, meaning that it would be weird if the celestial gods didn't have power over domains. Given the time shenanigans that take place inside, it's very possible that it is Istaroth specifically who oversees domains, especially because domain doors have a triquetra etched on them, which is just one of the many examples of the symbol popping up where time is stopped. Remember the parable about Istaroth that I mentioned? It's about the planting of the sacred sakura tree by A, even though that event was still thousands of years in the future when the scribe wrote it down. You know, time shenanigans. But the last paragraph really explains how Istaroth's powers work. Then the priest said, "Plant the spirit tree's branches in the ground." But the gardener said, "A spirit tree shall take 500 years to grow." The priest said, "Your one thought shall echo through eternity." And so, the gardener planted the branches in his backyard. In an instant, the slim branches grow into a new tree, and the new tree's spirit was a continuation of the past one. For it is the god of moments who is able to take seeds from this moment into the past and the future. The new tree immediately grew into the old one. It's like Istaroth took a snapshot of the tree in the past and then copied and pasted it in the future. She froze it as it was and then moved it forward in the timeline. Perhaps that's exactly why electrogranas that stem from the sacred sakura always take the shape of a triquetra, regardless of their level. But there's more. The defense mechanisms found in Dragonspine are rather unique. Not only are they giant floating triquetras, but they are also very much frozen in time. You see, with most enemies, their stats and HP increase as your world level increases, but not defense mechanisms. They retain the stats they spawn with forever. The rest of the world evolves around them, but they remain in stasis. They are also very much forgotten enemies as they aren't even listed in the archive, much like Istaroth herself has been forgotten by the nations that once revered her. The thing is, we know very little about these mechanisms, but they definitely look like something that would come out of Khaenri'ah. Most automatons do. And this led me to question whether Istaroth may have played a role in the underground nation, whether they were aware of it or not. An idea that started to seem a little less crazy when I remembered that Kaya's 4th Ascension passive, Glacial Heart, is represented by a larger triquetra in the foreground and a smaller upside-down one in the background. This very same symbol can be found on a portal that leads to the Spiral Abyss before you unlock it, While time does flow in the abyss, it does so much faster, so the double triquetra could represent a time anomaly. Regardless, between the defense mechanism and a descendant of the Albrecht clan being associated with this symbol, it doesn't feel like a coincidence. And really, were Enkanomiya and Khaenri'ah all that different? One was a godless nation, supposedly, from the start, while the other was abandoned by the very gods who had once cared for it. Could Istaroth be extending her protection to all the Celestia rejects? Khaenri'ah claiming they never had a god doesn't even necessarily contradict this idea, because the one thing Istaroth does best is being forgotten. But you know what is crazy? This would perfectly explain why she's a sinner. We have been exploring how the god of time is actually god of stasis, but now we need to turn to Celestia and explore why they absolutely hate that. And we know that they do because of Gnosticism. Most of you are probably already familiar with Gnosticism and how the Primordial One mirrors the Demiurge to an alarming extent, but if not, you can check out this video where I do a deep dive on this topic. What I have never seen anyone explore before, though, is how the Primordial One being the Demiurge affects the way time flows in Teyvat. You see, in Gnosticism, the Demiurge created 7 archons to rule over the material world, which checks out in Genshin. But have you ever wondered why there are 7 of them? It's not because of the number of elements, as Hydro and Cryo could easily be lumped together and Dendro didn't even need to be considered an element. Instead, it's because in Gnosticism, the archons not only represent each of the planets that were known when the texts were written, but also the flow of time. According to some sources, after the creation of the 7 archons, a lot more of them came about. 365 of them to be exact. 7 overseers of the material world for each day of the week. 365 archons for each day of the year. Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, wanted to create humans, so he set about creating Adam. However, he could not do it alone and needed the help of all 365 archons. Together, they made his physical and psychic bodies. But even with their collective effort, Adam still lay lifeless. Yaldabaoth was tricked into breathing life into his creation, and as he did so, the power of his Aeon mother, Sophia, that was trapped within him, flowed into Adam, giving him life and granting him a spark of divinity, making him superior to all the fake gods and angels that had made him. The archons were so jealous of this that they made Adam mortal. This is really important because it takes beings that personify the passage of time to make someone mortal, but this also tells us that immortality should be humanity's natural state, and that's because of the spark of divinity that dwells within humans. You see, the true gods live in the heavens above the material world, called the Pleroma. The Pleroma is an immutable realm of light where time does not flow, meaning that time only flows in Teyvat because it is a flawed material creation. I believe this might be why erosion exists in the first place. It may stem from the Primordial One's jealousy or its inability to create a realm that resembles the Pleroma. So I trust you can see why Istaroth going against that and preventing time from flowing might not be looked at too kindly by the other celestial gods. In fact, it might even be considered a sin. I guess that means that our local Hikikomori was right the whole time. We thought A was delusional, but as it turns out, she might have had the right of it. In fact, she might have spoiled the truth about Istaroth a long time ago. Only through eternity are you closest to heavenly principles. That always sounded like a very odd statement for her to make. After all, A has no love for Celestia. She fears them, but at the end of the day, Makoto died because of them. Obviously, she would want to be in their good graces to protect herself and her nation, but close to them? Heavenly Principles is a title that likely does not refer to the Primordial One alone, but also to all the shades. What if A wants to be close to Istaroth specifically? Both of the Raiden twins had a connection to the god of time. Makoto got help from her to plant the sacred sakura, and A probably erected a statue for her. But most importantly, if Istaroth truly is a god of stasis like we have discussed, A's view of eternity would be right up her alley. Think about it. All physical existence is flawed and time should not exist. Everything should remain as it is eternally. So, A got rid of her physical body, tried to freeze Inazuma in a state of stasis, and locked herself up in the plane of Enkanomiya to negate the effects of the passage of time, namely erosion. She tried to get herself and her nation closer to the Pleroma. And this interpretation also explains something else that had never made much sense to me. The Vision Hunt Decree. A went along with the Fatu's deception because she believed that the suffering the visions brought about didn't match her view of eternity, which makes no sense. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure vision wielders don't meet the most pleasant of fates when they ascend to Celestia, but so long as they haven't ascended yet, having a vision doesn't cause pain. Quite the opposite. It's having one taken away that does. It causes one to lose their purpose, ambitions, and even memories. What's more, the Vision Hunt Decree was one of the factors that led to Inazuma's civil war. That's a lot of suffering. A might have been thinking much farther ahead. Gnosticism holds that the material world is flawed and that it is the origin of all suffering. By forcing Inazuma into a state of stasis, A might have been trying to break free of the material world in a way, leaving all suffering behind. But that's the opposite of what Celestia wants. Remember how I said there are two symbols in Genshin that stood out to me? The second one is a Triskelion. It's an ancient symbol made up of 3 curved or jointed segments that spiral out from a common center. It's basically a fidget spinner. It not only looks dynamic, but it also symbolizes movement, progress, and evolution. On top of that, it can also represent threefold concepts, like the connection of the mind, body, and spirit, or the 3 dimensions of time, past, present, and future. In Genshin, it probably represents all of that, because the Triskelion is one of Celestia's symbols. It's not only seen in domains, but also within the shards of the Skyfrost nail that was sent down by the Primordial One. The Triskelion represents the opposite of stasis, so it being used in reference to Celestia adds to the idea that they want to keep time flowing in their flawed creation. Which is why, to keep Inazuma in stasis, A would have to reject anything given by Celestia, be it the visions of her people, or even her own gnosis that she gave to Yaimiko. That's probably why we can see something that looks like a modified Triskelion, where the segments do not touch in the plane of Euthymia. It may represent A's desire for stasis by separating past, present, and future, or even her breaking away from the material realm by separating mind, body, and spirit. And she was probably successful to a degree. After all, Electrovision stopped being awarded all over Teyvat during the Vision Hunt Decree. Raiden might have managed to sever her connection to Celestia for a while, and I can't help but wonder if Istaroth might have helped her with that. Perhaps we should change her title from the God of Time to the Patron God of Outcasts. From Enkanomiya to Inazuma and maybe even Khaenri'ah, Istaroth's influence seems to only make itself known when the other celestial gods aren't in the picture. Between that and her branding as a sinner, I can't help but wonder if Istaroth herself might have been cast out of Celestia. Maybe that's why we have a Solomon's knot in the main doors above the triquetra. It pops up in several places in-game and has been given many different meanings by different real-life cultures. But in the Adrinka symbol system, it means one being bad makes all appear to be bad. I have to wonder if that is Istaroth's way of telling us that she's on our side. That she isn't like the other celestial gods. She's quirky like that. But what do you think? Did I lose my mind for good, or do you think there is actually a lot of hidden messages in these symbols? What's your take on Istaroth? Me personally, I'd like to have her in our corner. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed, consider subscribing. That's all for today, my name is Blue, and I'll see you again soon. Safe journey, travelers!